Welcome, class, to today's Explainer. I'm your professor, and today we're moving way past those dysfunctional media stereotypes of family life. You know, the kind of manufactured drama you see on daytime talk shows or reality TV. Instead, we're going to look at objective sociological frameworks. Our goal today is to build a really comprehensive, working study guide so you can master exactly how we analyze families out there in the real world. Here's a quick look at our syllabus for this session. We'll start by breaking down macro versus micro perspectives. Then we'll dive into macro-level theories, followed by micro-level theories. After that, we'll review the key criticisms of these frameworks because no theory is perfect. And finally, we'll look at how we actually apply these theories to real-world research.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, macro versus micro perspectives. This is absolutely fundamental, guys. It represents a massive paradigm shift in how sociologists view the family. When we study human relationships, we generally have to choose one of two primary lenses to look through.
If you're taking notes right now, go ahead and draw a simple visual diagram for yourself. Think of the macro-level perspective as looking top-down at society's influence. It treats the family as a broad institution that is heavily shaped by massive societal forces, culture, and overarching power structures. Conversely, the micro-level perspective zooms all the way in. It's a bottoms-up approach that looks at everyday individual behaviors, interpersonal communication, and the tiny, daily interactions between family members.
Moving right along to section 2, let's start with that zoomed-out, top-down view, macro-level family theories. Specifically, we're going to focus on gender and feminist perspectives, which are heavily utilized by social scientists today.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that this isn't just one single unified theory. It's actually a shared lens. These perspectives analyze how the so-called traditional family isn't necessarily just a natural given, but rather a concept that was actively created or socially constructed by society as a way to maintain specific power dynamics.
Think of this framework as a giant umbrella with 5 main approaches underneath it. First, liberal feminism emphasizes equal economic opportunity and legal rights. Radical feminism, on the other hand, depicts the male-dominated family as a direct source of oppression. Then, we have socialist feminism, which asserts a woman's status is tied to both capitalism and patriarchy, while Marxist feminism specifically focuses on how capitalism exploits women for unpaid care. Finally, Black and multiracial feminism highlight the vital concept of intersectionality. This means that women can experience multiple overlapping forms of oppression, like race and class, right alongside gender.
But as good scholars, we absolutely must look at the critique of every theory we study. Critics of these macro-level feminist perspectives argue they focus a bit too heavily on power and inequality, which might cause us to miss the positive, unifying elements of family life. Some scholars also point out that these frameworks minimize or sometimes entirely exclude the male perspective, although to be fair, recent literature on men as gendered beings is definitely growing. And finally, some critics argue these theories occasionally cross the line from objective scientific observation into active political activism.
So, if macro theories are all about that broad societal power, it really begs the question, how do everyday interactions, personal choices, and simple day-to-day communications shape the family unit from the inside out?
Well, that question perfectly sets up section 3, micro-level family theories. We are officially moving from the societal level down to the deeply personal. We've got 4 main micro theories to cover, so let's get into it.
Think of this concept as a mental flashcard. First up is symbolic interaction theory. This basically argues that our interactions are reciprocal acts using symbols, words, and gestures. In fact, the sociologist Ernest Burgess famously called the family a unity of interacting personalities. Basically, it means that over time, our daily interactions and the unique social roles we adopt, like say playing the role of a child-centered parent, literally define the nature of our family and even our own sense of self.
Our second framework is social exchange theory. I kind of love this one because under this lens, we unconsciously act like relationship accountants. We are constantly seeking fairness and equity. We want to maximize our rewards and minimize our costs. If a marriage starts feeling out of balance or inequitable, we'll either work hard to restore that equity, try to psychologically justify it, or we start looking at available alternatives and pull the plug on the relationship.
Next up is family development theory. This theory maps out what we call the family career. It suggests families pass through universal, normative, age-graded stages. So it starts with the beginning family, moves to the childbearing family, then to families with adolescents, all the way to the family acting as a launching center for young adults, and finally, the aging family.
It really emphasizes a dynamic life course.
And finally, we have family systems theory, which is a very psychological, often therapeutic approach. This theory visualizes the family almost like a machine made up of related subsystems. You've got the spousal subsystem, the sibling subsystem, and so on. The family as a whole constantly seeks homeostasis, or balance. According to this theory, if you blur the boundaries between these subsystems, it creates disequilibrium and, ultimately, dysfunction.
Okay, those micro theories sound incredibly neat and tidy on paper, don't they? But think about your own life for a second. Are humans always perfectly rational calculators of cost and benefit? Absolutely not. And do all modern families pass sequentially through the exact same developmental stages? Definitely not.
Which leads us to Section 4, Key Theory Criticisms. It is totally vital that we critically evaluate these micro-level frameworks so we know exactly where their blind spots are.
The crucial takeaway for your study guide here is that symbolic interaction tends to minimize the role of power in relationships, and it kind of ignores the larger social context, acting as if the family just exists in a vacuum. Meanwhile, social exchange theory assumes a very clinical rationality. It completely misses the non-transactional, selfless aspects of human love. Plus, recent critiques by scholars like Landor and Barr point out that its core assumptions might not apply equally well across different cultures or specifically to people of color.
Furthermore, family development theory gets a lot of pushback for assuming a sequence that really only fits intact, traditional nuclear families. It largely ignores the realities of diversity when it comes to gender, race, class, and sexual orientation. Lastly, family systems theory still has a lot of its basic concepts in dispute. Many critics argue it's actually far more relevant to diagnosing dysfunctional families in a therapy setting than it is for explaining how healthy families actually operate day to day.
All right, we made it to Section 5, Applying Theories to Research. Now that our theoretical study guide is complete and we understand the strengths and weaknesses of both the macro and micro views, how do we actually put this into practice to study real-world family experiences?
While theories guide our research, and researchers generally gather data using two distinct methodologies. Quantitative research asks the exact same questions to a huge number of people. Think of a massive time use survey where thousands of people keep diaries of their daily activities to produce broad statistical trends. On the flip side, qualitative research studies much smaller groups but in extreme depth. Think of clinical case studies with a therapist that gather deep, subjective insights behind closed doors. Both approaches are absolutely vital to getting the full picture. There's a foundational rule of sociology that perfectly sums this up. Theories, no matter how elegant or clever they seem, are just blinders unless they are tested against the actual experiences of real families through objective research. Whether you're testing a macro theory on gender roles or a micro theory on sibling interactions, researchers have to prioritize objectivity, avoid ethnocentric fallacies, and ensure confidentiality to get to the truth.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I'm leaving you with a final take-home assignment. Based on what we've covered in our syllabus today, looking at top-down societal influences versus bottom-up interpersonal interactions, which theoretical lens do you think best describes the reality of modern family life? Does society dictate the family, or do our individual daily interactions create it? Ponder that for a bit and keep exploring. Class dismissed.